Astronauts to the moon.
Because that's what science is.
What's going on, everyone? It's Scientism, back with another video for you today. We're going to actually touch on a few topics, so I want to cover those real quick just so you know. We're going to be talking about the great religion of the 21st century, otherwise known as Scientism. We're going to be talking a little bit of math, some NASA fraud, some Roscosmos fraud, some JAXA fraud. We also have a little bit more information on the Stone hoax, or the Phoneyhenge, whichever way you prefer to refer to it. And we also have some launches and some ISS stuff. Also going to touch on radio waves proving the flat Earth, as well as Lake Okeechobee in Florida, also proving the flat Earth. So lots to talk about. So let's get started. So first, a quick reminder for those of you that will be doing the launch with us. Time to launch. Be on the lookout for my next video, which should be out in the next 2 days, and it will include all the launch details. And I'm also going to be emailing everyone who had sent me an email confirming their interest. So look for that in the coming days. Second thing about that, please check the date. I've been announcing 9/28 as the date, but found out that our eclipse is on the evening of the 27th here on the west coast of the United States. So make sure you check the date so you know when it will be in your area. The other thing I wanted to mention was a reminder that we've been doing the Monday night show, which we call Globebusters. Bob, TJ, myself, and Missa all get together and talk the flatlands, and it's been a pretty good show. We've had 5 already, so make sure you tune in Monday nights at 6 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time to enjoy the hilarity that is the Globebuster show. And due to the overwhelming success of last night's fantastic show, where we went and watched ISS live for about an hour and a half and saw some peculiar space activity, we've decided to add a second show. So now you may join us at the same flat time on the same flat channel, but instead on Tuesdays. So at 6 o'clock on Tuesdays, we will be watching the ISS live. Hope that you'll join us. And now, to more serious issues. But first, before we get started on all that, we're going to have to go back to school just a quick second, because it's time for a pop quiz. Sorry, guys. Relax, relax. Come on, it's just one little question with 2 little multiple choice answers. It'll be simple, I promise you. We'll just watch a 20-second video, answer the question, and boom, you're done. And I can get a good assessment of where we all are. Alright, so now that you've watched that, based on that video, I want to know if you feel that the sun is 93 million miles away. Simple answers, no or yes. And so, if you said no, you do not think that the sun is 93 million miles away, you pass. You're using your head, you're understanding science is not the end-all be-all, and that you actually have brains, so congratulations. And I'm sure no one said yes, right? What? No. Someone thinks the sun is 93 million miles away.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
So now let's talk about the great religion of the 21st century, the end-all be-all, and that is scientism. What people need to realize is not only is science an institution, it's also an extremely dogmatic one, as it assumes very controversial statements as being true, when in fact those statements are either demonstrably false or they're questionable, to say the very least. And these dogmas influence the interpretations of the scientific data. And this impacts the studies that are done and for what reason they're done, and also determines what is ultimately taught in the education system. So science is just as much of a religion as religion is. In order to be taken seriously in science, well, you need to be published in a peer-reviewed paper. In order to be published in a peer-reviewed paper, you would have to do quite a few tests and studies and experiments, and of course these things take money. So in order to get the backing to do the tests and experiments that you would need to get into a quality peer-reviewed journal, well, those studies would need to be work that would be valuable to the current models that science gives us. I mean, if you think about it, why would the government or a large company or institution, why would they fund a study that has a potential to throw a wrench in the current accepted dogmas or the current accepted system? It just wouldn't happen. If your study would hurt science, then it will be suppressed, and you'll probably lose your job and the funding that you had, and basically be blackballed from science. Science is still a very strongly career-driven discipline. It is a career-driven profession, and they, just like everyone else, are trying to make money. And scientists depend heavily on a good reputation in order to receive funding, and a good reputation is entirely dependent on the publication of high-profile scientific papers. And so there is a strong imperative to publish or to perish. Basically, this motivates people to fabricate results. And there is an ease of fabrication, because in many scientific fields, the results are often difficult to reproduce accurately, being obscured by different extraneous data or whatever the outside elements may be. That means that even if a scientist does falsify their data, then they can expect to get away with it, because at the end they can just claim ignorance or confusion as to why their particular results differed from their peers. So there is no scientific police. There's nobody going around who is educated in the investigation of hoaxes or the investigation of fraud. So it's easy to cheat, although it's difficult to know exactly how many fabricate their data. But I can guarantee you it's a lot. The potentiality of severe consequences is not enough to keep them away from doing this, because on one hand, if they do it, they get their funding, which means they live an easier life, plus they get their name and lights. Whereas if they don't do this, then they may see other scientists doing it, and this is what leads them to want to have to do the same thing. Even worse, most times schools can't release the information about hoaxes. Basically, when a professor or a scientist gets caught cheating or fabricating results, usually the school can't release what exactly that particular scientist did. There's not enough to deter them from falsifying their data. Now, science has a couple of prejudices that it claims, and this I believe came from Carl Sagan. And tell me if you think these are being followed currently by the scientific establishment. Okay, in science, observations, all of them, need to be repeatable and repeated. Okay, that doesn't mean you submit a paper once and everyone just accepts it. Doesn't mean you make a claim 400 years ago and everyone just accepts it. It means all your claims must be repeatable and repeated. Number two, you need to have debate by knowledgeable proponents on all the points of view, because no good comes when an authority silences the actual debate on an issue. And this is what science does every single day. They want people to be quiet about that which goes against their current paradigms, and they want people to speak up if they have things that support their current paradigms. That is exactly what Carl Sagan warned against. Number three, there are no authority figures. Scientific discourse takes place on a level playing field in which ideas are judged by their merits. And this again is not something that we see today in science. How does Neil deGrasse get away with going on a show like Larry King and saying that he can go into a conversation, say anything he wants, and no one can argue with him because he's speaking on behalf of science, therefore he is 100% factually correct and no one can have any differing opinion. That is absolute horseshit. Number 4, use more than one hypothesis. There are often many possible patterns or explanations for patterns, and they should all be examined. And the quickest way to get to the answer is usually to examine them all simultaneously, and not to assume that one is true or the other is true, or that they're mutually exclusive. Also, we don't see that at all in science anymore. Number 5, don't get too attached to your hypothesis. The whole point of testing a hypothesis is to try and falsify it, which is absolutely not followed anymore. Now what they do is make a test to prove what they're saying is true. That's what science is. That's what they become. Is you have every one of these guys who sits on their little perch and feels they could never, under any circumstance, be convinced that they are wrong. Saddest thing about this is Neil deGrasse learned straight from Sagan. So I don't know where he veered off and started raising the roof or doing whatever he does, but it's a joke. Number 6, quantify. Remember, subjective observations are useless to science. Sometimes subjectivity can creep into even detailed observations. The true proof of objectivity is often the ability to count or measure. Okay, so that's why I tell the globe people, measure the earth. Stop putting it on paper and telling me Pythagoras figured out some theorem that tells you you're on a ball. Go out and measure it in your reality. But you can't, because it's not there. Number 7 says a chain is as strong as its weakest link. Basically saying that your entire theory needs to be made up of facts. You can't have some facts with some nonsense and call it a theory or call it true. You need to have the whole cake. Number 8 is talking about Occam's razor. Basically, when faced with many possible solutions, the simplest one is usually correct. For instance, the Earth is standing still. It's a little bit simpler than we're spinning 1,000 miles per hour, going 66,000 miles per hour through space, turning around the sun's going around the galaxies. You need to put all those things into your little model, or you could just say Earth's flat and stationary. But heaven forbid, that might mean there's a creator. That means that Richard Dawkins isn't the most intelligent thing ever. So we won't be seeing that anytime soon. Number 9, and a really big one, is falsifiability. In science, you have to have a definite answer to a question. If I were wrong, how would I know it? If you don't, you aren't doing science. That means it must be possible, in principle, to know if your hypothesis is wrong. If you have no way of knowing if you are wrong, there's really not much to test or discuss scientifically. So that is exactly what we have with gravity and with dark matter. These things are just accepted as true. They've been taken as axioms. They've been placed as constants. And this is what happened to science. And they're teaching it to you as a religion by saying, we've tested everything. Everything we tell you has been tested multiple times, thousands of times. Otherwise, we wouldn't tell you. And it is possible that that's what they believe. But it is not the fact. And you need to look into it and research it. And it's right in front of your face. And believe me, if you go to Dawkins and look for the answer, well, of course you're going to get told that science is the fact. You need to look at outside sources. And no, I don't mean the Bible. I mean, use your brain, use your mind, and research. The sad thing is how they're allowed to get away with teaching evolution. The fact that they teach it in the schools when the idea that life and the entire universe came from only natural processes is absolutely a religious statement. It is 100% a religious belief. And these kind of things are incapable of observations. There is no proof. It's not testable. So it cannot be considered science. It's dogma. It's religion. But yet it's taught to our kids in school. And how is that not atheism? How is it being taught on taxpayers' dollars while we have teachers fighting in the courts and in forums and in communities and posts all around the internet about how right they are and how true of a science it is, just so that they can keep their monkey religion in schools? It's BS. And I'll be the first one to admit that if a teacher gets up and wants to teach that Jesus Christ is your personal Savior, or wants to teach that the Bible is the literal Word of God, I have a problem with that, because that is teaching religious beliefs in school. But then, it can't be okay for them to not just teach evolution, but call it a fact. And what they've done is completely destroyed any connection with free speech that we once had. Free speech is gone. As a student or as a teacher, you can't bring up your opposition to Darwinian evolution. As a student, you can't bring up the idea of intelligent design. I mean, teachers such as Eric Hedren have been threatened with lawsuits if they just mention intelligent design in class. And so what I struggle to understand is simply, why are people allowing this to happen? Do we have no scientists out there that actually have a conscience? Do we have no science teacher that can't face the facts? I mean, what these con artists are doing, and yes, I mean you, scientists and science teachers and science fanboys, you're responsible just as much as the originators of the hoax, because you refuse to look into what it is that you were taught. It's science, right? Science doesn't lie. Science doesn't hoax. They don't pretend. Well, you're very wrong, and actually, it's worse. What they did is they fooled you by teaching you their hoax, their bogus little system, and then also teaching you that if you believed it, you were smart. And if anyone comes around who doesn't believe it, they're idiots. See, what they're doing is just playing right into the hands and to the needs of human beings to be popular, to be considered smart. And that's all you guys care about. You could care less about it. You don't feel like looking at the facts to see, I wonder if we went to the moon, because the facts are right in front of your face. But all you care about is your next door neighbor not thinking you're an idiot. And the stories are obviously everywhere. All you have to do is just look it up, and you'll see what's going on. From chemistry professor Nancy Bryson, she lost her job as the head of science and mathematics at Mississippi University, which was her alma mater, because she gave an extracurricular speech to the honor students mentioning the issues she had with natural selection and random variation and mutation. And her speech was great, and the students loved it, and immediately following her speech, the head of biology stood up and gave a prepared statement about how she was speaking about religion and her theistic views, which she didn't even mention, and she got fired. And that's the kind of nonsense that is going on when you can't even say, I've got problems with the current accepted view. You do? You're out of here. Fired. Sorry, we don't have problems with things here. We accept things that we're taught, and we move on like little robots. I mean, perhaps you've heard the story of Dr. Mark Armitage, who was fired by Cal State when he was the supervisor of the microscope laboratory, I believe, and he found inside of a dinosaur bone some soft tissue, which would indicate that the dinosaur was less than 50,000 years old, which, how could that be? Dinosaurs have to be, they were extinct 67 million years ago, so you better not turn that evidence in because we'll fire you. And so, of course, he does what any scientist would do, right? You report your findings and the results of your experiments and your tests. He turned it in. Fired! Get out! Your dinosaur didn't equal 67 million years. That's a requirement here to work in the science department. Sorry. Oh, you're going to mention your problems with evolution? Get out! You're not allowed here. We have very clear dogmas. You understand? You want to be excommunicated? Do you want to be removed from the science department here? You better get in line before we get the Jesuits to come get you. See, it shouldn't be surprising that geniuses like Bill Nye and Richard Dawkins have both said that to not believe in evolution means that you're primitive or you're stupid or insane. It shouldn't be a surprise because they have to believe in it. If you are a backer of science, then you can't ever bring God into the fold. So what's left? This pathetic theory of evolution. It's filled with falsities and inaccuracies and conjecture. And if that's all that's left, if that's their best explanation, what else do you want them to use? Now, just remember, they're crafty, so don't let them try and fool you, because they have no evidence of evolution on a macro level, which is changing from one species to another, in all their testing. And that's even with human intervention. They have tried it with bacteria. And with bacteria, the lifespan is about 12 minutes. So they can see many, many generations, one after another. And so do you think that any bacteria ever changed into anything other than a bacteria? Absolutely not. And then they tried fruit flies, because with fruit flies, they have a short lifespan as well, and humans went in and said, we'll just intervene and make the generations go even faster to find our proof. Well, how about a 35-year experiment by evolutionists showing exactly what was the truth? Because instead of waiting for natural selection to happen by general selection and mutation and natural selection and survival of the fittest and all their other little lies, they used variation to breed fruit flies that developed from an egg to adult 20% faster than normal, but weighed less, and they also lived shorter lives, and they were less resistant to starvation. So there were many mutations, but none of them caught on, and so the experiment ran into the limits of the variations, and they wrote in their little final paper that despite decades of sustained selection in relatively small, sexually reproducing laboratory populations, selection did not lead to the fixation of newly arising unconditionally advantageous alleles. The probability of fixation in wild populations should be even lower than its likelihood in these experiments. So they got nowhere, and again are loser. I mean, honestly, the entire theory is ridiculous. Look at it this way. If you think about what's inside your arms or what's inside your legs, all the cells and the veins and you name it, all of those things have to know where to go. They all have design, they all have importance, they all have functions, yet science can't tell us what does that. They simply know what's in there. A lot of good that does, but it doesn't quite explain how they know where to go, how to make a human, because that takes design. So let's take a look at this picture in front of you, a big pile of wood. Now let's take a hammer and throw it at that pile of wood for as many billion years as you want. Do you think that that pile of wood will ever turn into a house? No, there's no possible chance, right? Yet evolution wants us to believe that that is exactly what happened with the universe, and even more than a house. A house has 1/1,000,000th of the impressive design features that are in human beings. So the moral of that story is that science needs to get out of theology and get out of things they don't belong in and keep to themselves and not tell lies and nonsense and seem like they're talking out of their ass. So you might have noticed before that when you read a book, sometimes based on sentence structure and content, you can actually know who the author is. Well, I think I found the secret author of the theory of evolution.
What do you think tribal sovereignty means in the 21st century? And how do we resolve conflicts between tribes and the federal and state governments?
Tribal sovereignty means that it's sovereign. I mean, you've been given sovereignty, and you're viewed as a sovereign entity.
Okay.
And therefore, the relationship between the federal government and tribes is one between sovereign entities.
So, the great thing is that there is some stand-up people in this world, thank goodness, and a few of them are scientists that have signed the Scientific Dissent from Darwinism page. It is simply a form that talks about Darwinian evolution and the impossibility of it, and is signed by many scientists throughout the country. And so I thought it was really cool that they had almost 1,000 signatures from scientists that had said no to this hoax, this bullshit. But to be friendly, the National Center for Science and Education decided to fight back by creating their own list of scientists who were actually pro-evolution, and decided to only allow people whose name was Stephen to sign it, kind of showing that they were oh so cool that they would get more signatures with just using the name Stephen. Well, there's a little bit more to the story. For instance, they don't really tell you that they allowed Stephen with a V, Stephen with a PH, Stefan, Esteban, Stephanie. There's very many variations of the name Stephen. But still, it seems like they've got the clear head in this little battle. Except for if you look even deeper, you'll see some numbers that they've used, and let's see if they're being, well, scientifically accurate and mathematically accurate. So you'll see they have a little FAQ page here, and one of the questions was asking about who gets to sign and how they pick the people. And it says, according to data from the U.S. Census, approximately 1.6% of males and approximately 0.4% of females, so approximately 1% of U.S. residents, have first names that would qualify them to sign the statement. So it is reasonable to infer that at least 22,000 scientists would agree with the statement, at least because the statement was quietly circulated to a limited number of people. As of March 9, 2015, there are 1,362 signatures, corresponding to 136,200 scientists. Now, let's think about this. So I saw 1.6% of males and approximately 0.4% of females. So we just add those up. That should be, 1%. 1.6% of males and approximately 0.4% of females. So approximately 1% of U.S. That doesn't make any sense. Maybe they rounded it. Let's look at it that way. So 1.6 would round to 2. 0.4 would round to 0. Okay, so 2 plus 0 is, 1. Doesn't seem like they should have got 1%. It should be 2%. So their number of 22,000 scientists should be doubled. Should be 44,000 scientists. And here they are, very excited about the fact that they have 1,300 signatures, but they have 1,300 signatures out of 44,000 scientists named Steve. I don't think I'd be very excited if I were them. But, hey, that's just based on their numbers. Who knows? We could be wrong. So, whatever. They think that God's going away, that he's just going to disappear, or the idea of a creator is just going away, and they're going to figure out the answer to life, and it simply won't happen. As Obama would say, you didn't build this. So the only tactic they have left is to ridicule and call their opponents names and make fun of them, personal attacks. You could just take Red's Rhetoric, for example, who prefers to just attack me personally, repeatedly, because he thinks he's smarter than me. And I guess it really depends on what your opinion of smart is. Mine is not the ability to remember numeric formulas and repeat them. That's not smart. Somebody who can use their brain and realize that they're in the middle of a hoax and see the truth for what it is and be smarter than what the elite tell you so that you live your little slavery life. Those people are smart in my book, but to each their own. So the bottom line is simply that evolutionists must just assume evolution is true. It's the only choice. Science is true, so how could evolution not be true? Most scientists believe in it. It's a fact. It's proof. And then they write endlessly about it and where it happened and when it happened and the rates and the lineages, etc. But I guess they don't realize that if macroevolution is physically impossible, never been seen, never been produced in any kind of test results, then the rest of it is all fantasy. There are really only two possibilities, and that's every part of every living thing arose by random chance and mutation, or it was intelligently designed with purpose. So I do have respect for those who stood up and said that they don't believe in the farce of Darwinian evolution. At least they had the courage to stand up and defy their high priests of academia by voluntarily adding their names to that skeptic list. But I guess the others are either brainless or spineless, or named Steve and brainless, or possibly named Steve and spineless. Oh boy. So I'm sure you've heard of a foghorn, right? Well, I decided to invent something new. This is called the fraud horn. So when you hear that sound today, it probably means a fraud is right around the corner. For example, space is a fraud. I know, it's sad. It's not very exciting. It's not probably what you want to hear. But at least I believe in letting people have faith in whatever they want. You can trust whoever you want, do whatever you want. Just do it behind the doors of your home. So you can believe what you're taught. You can believe what was told to you through history and what ended up in school books. You can trust others with your life. You can trust others with your one shot here on Earth. You can choose to follow the leader and choose to trust man. Fine by me. Or you can trust yourself. You can trust reality. You can recognize the reasons that people lie, the monetary gain they get from lying. I mean, you recognize that people are power hungry. They want nothing but money, right? So you can easily follow the money. You can even ask what you get out of it or who benefits from it. By doing that, you can kind of start to come up with a more clear outlook to life. So I do get a lot of funny comments on my videos, one of them being, please don't procreate. And then I gotta tell them, sorry, too late. My seed's been spilled. The other funny comment is the why. Why would they do this hoax? I don't understand it. Well, it's right in front of your face, so let's go over some of it. Let's start off with the globe. Remember, guys, it's taught as fact. That globe was in your classroom in kindergarten. They also taught you to make fun of those who disagree with it. That it's mathematically proven. You don't even need to question it. It's told to you it's reality, and that everyone knows it's a sphere. The ancients thought it was flat. Desert wandering nomads thought it was flat. It was calculated thousands of years ago. It's proven by mathematics, but not observation. It's against all my intuition and sense. It cannot be felt. It cannot be observed. It just is. Stupid. Somebody told you it's spherical. So let's think first. How does it benefit you? Makes you small and insignificant. Keeps you from wondering, searching. You can't always see the truth. And it teaches you you're not as smart as the others. The globe defies all logic. It creates forces that we can't even see. You have to believe in it or you're stupid. And you can't be successful if you don't. All the educated and intelligent men in the world believe in it. It's 4.54 billion years old because we can date rocks. You'll never understand it. And it turns the word gravity into so much more. How does it benefit them? Well, you work and pay taxes. You go to college to become educated. You believe in it and pay NASA to discover more about it. You believe in satellites, so you pay more for technology. You need GPS to get around. Your heroes are astronauts who see it from above. You accept their photos and all their charts. You watch the news to learn about the sun. You give them that control. They teach you about the cosmos and the forces. They are smart, you are dumb. You go to school and repeat the lie and are taught not to question all the given facts. You let them drill into the earth. You let them suck the life and energy from it. You let them kill when they are your elected ones. You trust them and their judgment. You believe in them and stop learning or growing. You speak and parrot and even fight on behalf of them. You live and then you die. You struggle, you toil. You build for them and you design. You accept, you conform. You allow, you give away. You teach it as truth and justify its mystery. You deny your eyes, your heart, your gut, and your humanity. You give up your spiritual self and trade for their collective goals and agenda and to glorify them. So what is the globe lie itself? Well, that's easy. Remember that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and in order to believe the globe, you must also accept that you're spinning 1,000 miles per hour, flying through space 66,000 miles per hour. You're upside down, or maybe you're right side up. You're in an endless universe, vast suns. Our sun, 93 million miles away, and it's nuclear. The moon is 250,000 miles away, and we can land on it. The atmosphere is stuck to the Earth as it spins, but it's also stuck to space but doesn't get ripped off by it. There are billions of Earth-like planets. Life is just waiting to be found. The sun is the same as all the stars. It's just an average-sized sun. Stars are trillions to quintillion miles away. We could be struck any moment by a flying, out-of-control meteor. You are accidental. You're a product of stardust. And you're a product of evolution due to natural selection, mutation, and random nothings. So, just remember, newsflash, you don't live here. Believe me, no one does. Or here. This is art, not reality. This is pretend. This is very make-believe. This is a religion. This is simply bullshit. This is paint shop, not reality. Wake up. Stop being fooled by nebulas and nonsense. Do I really need to say anything here? Don't tell me you believe in the great big spaghetti galaxy in the sky. Look at that curve. Think that's real? Come on, people. Be human. Not fools. NASA, ESA, Roscosmos, JAXA, all lies. I mean, they're in space, on other planets, discovering planets, galaxies, spending our money, doing all kinds of stuff. But they're not taking pictures of the Earth, not proving the moon landings, not showing eclipses from space, not giving us 24-hour webcams, not giving us webcams from the moon. They're not allowing private corporations to go up, not giving us any true information, not giving us true images, not giving us discoveries or any inventions, not even helping humanity at all. What exactly are they doing? Well, in my opinion, one of two things. One of two things is going on. Either they're lying to us because there's a secret space mission or some sort of alien presence that they're hiding, or number two, they cannot even go into space, or the Earth is not at all what they have told us. So how do we know which one? Well, let's look. If there was a secret space mission or alien presence that they were trying to hide, they would certainly appease us with the easy stuff. They would show us pictures of the Earth, we'd have a webcam from the moon, there'd be live video, other kinds of proof of the moon landing. They would allow private corporations to go up. They would even be charging for space trips and moon orbits. There's a lot of things that they would be doing if that's all they were trying to hide. But they're not. So, what are they doing? They're lying. They're fabricating. They're pretending. They're telling us, you have to believe us. If you don't, you're a fool. Why would we lie? The truth is, it's a hoax. Yep, nothing but a good old-fashioned fraud. Oops. Excuse me, NASA.
Your balls are showing.
Oh, and lucky us, we get to look at another fraud. This one is the Felix Baumgartner, the epic jump from space. Let's take a look at some of these images, since globe earthers want to always talk about it. The funniest thing is the intelligent and intellectual NASA fanboys will always want to tell me how stupid I am, and then drop this link as proof that the Earth is round. So, let's just put it this way. I'd rather be an idiot, a numbskull, a moron. I'd rather my parents be siblings than to be an intellectual, if being an intellectual requires me to believe in this crap. Let's take a look. There's Felix opening the door to the nice flat horizon in the back. Now remember, he's about 128,000 feet, where NASA flies their little ISS spaceship at 1.2 million feet. And yet, looks like a flat lands there in the back to me. Weird that NASA is so much higher, and they get the curve, and he doesn't. Oh, there's the curve. I guess he does get the curve. That's pretty weird. Didn't we just see it was flat? Seems like a pile of GoPro horse malarkey to me. See there? Flat at the top left, curved in the bottom right, and it's just 1,000 feet more. I think somebody's pulling our chain, and his name is Felix Baumgartner. I do have a special treat for you. In full color, very rare footage, 1965. Hailing from Russia, Alexei Leonov.
First the spacewalk.
Now, behold the leader of the great nation of Russia, Vladimir Putin. He is strong. He is virile. a man amongst men. President Putin will crush your President Obama.
Let us discuss the lies of NASA. As maybe you saw if you watch any news or turn on any channels on your TV, I'm sure that they talked about the miraculous job that the NASA ISS astronauts did in growing lettuce in space. Yes, what humanity did thousands of years ago, NASA has figured out to do, and it only took them $1 trillion. Not bad, NASA. Growing red lettuce in space. Notice also they make the important point by letting you know that the lettuce grew in space for 33 days. And it only took 33 days to get the lettuce to sprout. 33 Masons. Peculiar, all these articles clearly show that it is the first time the NASA astronauts have ever eaten anything grown on board the ISS. First time they had any vegetables, first time they had any lettuce, which is, of course, a complete, outright fabrication and lie. Imagine that. Yep, you'll see here that the USU space farming gear was lofted in 1994, and by 2002, Utah State University Space Dynamics had also included a lettuce experiment, and it said that the astronauts were delighted to eat their greens and how much they enjoyed their lettuce. So, let us just keep letting NASA lie. Why not? They're scientific, mathematical. But in truth, it was just another And speaking of fraud, let's watch some ISS.
Fraud. That's the fraud. It's ridiculous. We don't live on a ball. Don't you realize it's not a ball?
Alrighty then. Looks pretty flat in this photo. Yep, and pretty flat from here. Now take a look at these two images that I got from a kid on DeviantArt that makes Earth pictures. NASA, looks like you need to head over there to get some new graphic artists, because this kid's better than you. Which doesn't take much. Tell you that. Next we've got an image of a compass, and of course the almighty faulty globe. And you'll see how it just wouldn't work. You'd have people going every different direction, while thinking they're going north. Who knows where they'd be going. Only works on the plane. Next we got a special guest host popping in just for a quick segment to show you this little image.
Hello to all my Sphere fans. It's Crime Box. Please don't listen to what that knobhead says. Of course we went to the moon. How do you know? Because someone told you. This image couldn't be more wrong. This isn't what happens to a sphere in the universe at all. This shows a perfect green sphere, rotating. But the water is flying off. Why? Has no one introduced this portion of the galaxy to gravity? A sphere with no gravity isn't a sphere at all. Gravity holds the water to the center of the sphere. I swear. I'm not a lying swindler. Am I?
Well, I say hell yes. And if you want to know what proof I have, easy, because I just told you. Now, let's move on to the NASA swimming pool for some camera practice. Listen carefully as the announcer in the pool, yes, I did say that, there's an announcer who's in the pool, tells the astronauts what positions to take so the camera can see him.
So Tim, you need to be between the camera and the platform, if that makes sense. Between the camera kind of a platform. So if you're in your spot where you install where you stage your bags and install the AVFR, the boom should be on the other side of you. Yeah, on what would be your backside. So for example, right now we have the camera pointing station aft. Okay, so Tim, we think you're about right where you need to be. If you hold onto one of those circumferential handrails around Columbus.
Yeah, your guess is as good as mine on this eclipse here. I honestly have no clue how it would even work. Is it real? Even if you're upside down on the globe in Australia, you can't have this happen. Nor would it work from anywhere north, for instance in North America. How would you be the shadow on the top of the moon but still be able to see the light hitting the bottom of the moon? Oh boy, seems like it makes a bunch of no sense to me. One interesting thing about eclipses, let me read you a little quick story. This is from Wikipedia regarding Christopher Columbus and the March 1504 lunar eclipse. When Christopher Columbus came to the New World, specifically the north coast of Jamaica, he was able to use European scientific understanding to correctly predict a lunar eclipse. The event is known as the March 1504 lunar eclipse and occurred when Columbus, after he wanted to be seen as godlike, that's cool, stated that he would make the moon disappear during the night of February 29, 1504. The reason Columbus wanted to prove that he could make the moon disappear is because he and his crew were eating a great deal of the inhabitants' food, and the inhabitants refused to feed them anymore. So Columbus was right in his prediction, for he used astronomical tables and local clocks in order to predict when the lunar eclipse would happen, and was able to convince the inhabitants that he had the power to make the moon disappear and then reappear. After the inhabitants believed that Columbus was truly able to make the moon disappear, they begged him to return the moon to its previous form. And after roughly an allotted amount of time, the amount of time that Christopher Columbus discerned to be how long the eclipse would last, Columbus agreed to return the moon, and the moon began to reappear. And the next day the inhabitants gave Columbus and his crew all the food they desired. That's called theft, and is more Cristobal Columbus bullshit. So, check out the description. I've got a link if you want to sign the petition to end that guy's holiday. It is a joke. I'm ashamed. How do we have... Do you know the guy never stepped in America? Never. Not once in the 50 states. Never once. Nor did he name it. It is ridiculous, so I'd ask you to join me, and let's kill Christopher Columbus Day. Let's name it Native Americans Day or Indigenous People Day, anything else. But that man does not deserve the highest honor. So let's get that name out of our kids' school books and off the calendar. Alright, on to more eclipse stuff. So I wanted to put this image back up there for the eclipse, since I had a few people tell me they're very confused, or I'm confused. What I was saying about why the eclipses don't last 3 days is if you look at that moon on the top, look at the distance that they say it travels in 3 hours. Well, guess what, guys? The moon doesn't go around the Earth in a day. It goes around in a month. So I'm saying for the moon to get through our shadow would take 3 days. Comprende? Capiche? Who knows? Or maybe you just believe in this stuff. This is a beautiful ESA. Yep, the moon came like that and just right up to... Yeah, the moon always travels like that. I always see it. I don't know, but you guys are busy watching, but just sweeps right in there. Pendulum right up to the top. Without the sun rotating. Great. ESA. Faking bullshit. Another hoax. This is hilarious. Watch the moon. He's a little drunk. Whoa!
And then again on Saturday, the full moon rose on the horizon, and the crew captured some very unique views of the moon above the Earth's atmosphere. again, from this vantage point of about 250 statute miles above the Earth.
One more time, because what's better than seeing the drunk moon? Well, truthfully, there's really only one thing better than the drunk moon, and that's the drunk moon with little things in the sky holding it. Only thing I can think of. Thank you, International Space Station. Take a look at this. This is just too funny for you NASA fanboys and scientist lovers. Let's watch how the shuttle used to get to space. Now, remember, it had to go out of the Earth's atmosphere upside down. Then it flies around space upside down. Then it flips over and then enters again from its belly. So again, just so you can see what it does, it flies upside down in space. Then it has to turn over. Then flips full side over, all in space. Yeah, you usually don't get to see it. I know they show the ISS live, but you're not going to get to see that. See how it goes up? And we're doing the roll technique. Roll technique, check, roll technique. Roger, we're going to dump this in the ocean, roger. Tank separation. People pretend that they videotaped it with their own cameras, even though you've never ever seen one go into space, because it can't. Imagine that. Here's another little diagram as it launches. Then it goes through SRB separation, fuel tank separation. Now it's upside down and it goes into orbit. Then it has to retrofire backwards. Then it's going to do the flip. And then it's going to come through the atmosphere just fine, unless you're Columbia. Then you end up on the floor.
90 degrees.
Now let's watch
heading alignment
this shuttle, or the model, or drawing of the shuttle,
now 2 minutes away
as it
from touchdown
heads towards Kennedy Landing Runway number 33.
Going at a rate of 355 miles per hour.
Damn Masons.
Touching down.
But look at that thing. That thing could not be more fake.
Away from touchdown.
Mighty Morphin NASA shuttle.
355 miles per hour.
Careful coming back through the atmosphere.
Going at a rate of 355 miles per hour. Will be touching down at a rate of 224 miles per hour. 16,000 feet in altitude at the moment.
And I was told if I don't say those things, they're going to cut off my hands. Oh, now it's coming in hot. All right.
And
that looks real.
6,700 miles above in altitude.
Look at the face. It's so burnt from coming back through the hot atmosphere. But for some reason, the back of it isn't. I guess it wasn't that hot. It was only hot in the front. Now, right about now, I'd be thinking, where's your landing gear? We're going to need some landing gear here on runway 33. Houston, this is a shuttle. How the hell do I use my landing gear? That looks real. Oh yeah. You can do this at home, kids. Buy one of these shuttles for $9.99 at your local grocery store in that cheap toy section. and just get some fishing wire. Lower it in front of your HD TV screen. You need landing gear. You need landing gear. They never put their landing gear down. They're going to crash. Oh,
shuttle's nose
there it is.
Landing, and
that's not fake.
so you can see the
It's instant landing gear. Only NASA's discovered that.
in place.
No one else has quite figured that out yet. And that's a glider, they say.
Touchdown.
It can't fly like a plane because it's a
All right,
space
Barry, a little
plane.
more pulling the
They can only go
drag
300
chute.
miles from the Earth. Southwest can go farther than that.
nose gear touchdown. Atlantis now rolling
Runway
out
33.
on runway 33
Damn
at Kennedy
Masons.
Space Center.
Next, let's watch this ESA rocket, which is just as nonsense as the rest of them. Actually, I'm starting to think some of these things are nothing but projections. And I'll show you on this one exactly what I'm talking about. First, we gotta go through the countdown. Force, lie, fake, fraud, hoax, scam, joke, theft, clowns, fib.
Top, allumage moteur Vulcain.
Now keep your eye on the left side. We are going to slow it down here right after. But you'll see on the left side that there's a mystery reflection or other rocket. So now we're going to watch slow motion. Keep your eye on this left side, right by that where the tower is. As the scene switches, see that rocket? Nothing more than a reflection. And if you slow that down yourself, you'll actually see a bird fly through it or something. Fake as a $3 bill, folks. Now let's watch Roscosmos as they play backdraft with their rocket. And as you can see, it just sucks back in and then sucks right back out. Here it comes. Out. No, let's go in. Let's go out. Alright, let's launch. Are we going to space? No. Nobody goes to space. Just another, you know what, big old fraud. Alright, so just reminding you guys to use your brain when you see images like this. Please laugh hysterically at the astrophysicist Neil deGrasse nonsense and all his buddies. But next we're about to take a look at Lake Okeechobee, which is out in Florida. It is about 30 miles, I would say, around. It's got some random distances here and there. But I saw it, and it's a very strange lake because it's got an average depth of 9 feet, which sounds crazy, but it's also the second most or second largest lake in the contiguous United States. There's a Google Earth picture of it, and then I will show you what I observed proving the flatlands. Here's a nice little picture taken from somebody, and as I zoomed in on this image, you'll notice that I could see in the wee distance back there that little water tower. So I brought that up to get my distance to the water tower, which was around 12 miles. And so then we drew back and looked again, and if you look really carefully here, you'll see that you can see telephone poles all the way around that lake, all the way till you hit the trees on the other side. This is actually to the left of where that water tower was. Well, do the measurements. The distance there was 30 miles, which is 600 feet of curvature. So even if we took the observer's height and the height of the telephone pole or electric pole, whatever it is, there's no way that item should be seen at all from that distance. Lake Okeechobee proves flat Earth. Thank you, Florida. I did hate you after NASA and Red's rhetoric, but you've redeemed yourself. Lake Okeechobee's okay by me. Next, we've got some interesting photos just to show you what I've talked about before about water looking like it's going to drown you as it rises to your eye level. That is also from all three of those images from Lake Okeechobee. Now I have a little bit more detail on Stonehenge I wanted to tell you about. I also have like a 100-page PDF that's going to be in the description, so check that out. So those of you who think I'm losing my mind realize it's not me. So just a couple passages here. A summary: Stonehenge was transformed considerably during the 20th century, the monument itself being subjected to more intervention and alteration from 1901 than at any other time since the Bronze Age. Some of the most important episodes of excavation at Stonehenge during the 20th century were driven by a desire to interfere with the monument's physical appearance, often but not always due to concerns about stability. The romantic ruin of previous generations, leaning monoliths, twisted triathlons, and recumbent sarcens, was rationalized into a more upright, orderly design and secured for posterity with concrete. At the same time, the visibility of the enclosing earthworks had enhanced for the paying visitor. The enclosure ditch only partially backfilled and surplus materials spread across the site to conceal old trackways. 1901 was also the year that the monument was first enclosed and an admission charge introduced, both intended as means of controlling the numbers and types of visitors. Since Stonehenge passed into the state hands in 1918, catering for the increasing customers and visitors had also continued to play an important role in the presentation and appearance of the monument and its immediate surroundings. Viewing the recent history of Stonehenge through a narrative that sees a privately owned and neglected 19th century ruin transformed, via essential maintenance and repair, into a unique and monumental expression of Neolithic beliefs and an achievement rather than overlooks the complexities of that 20th century transformation. Looking more closely at the circumstances surrounding three key episodes: the appearance in 1891 of some timber supports, the straightening and concreting of the massive stone 56 in 1901, and the uncompleted reparations in 1919 to 1920, help show not only why we have a more stable and secure monument today, but also that Stonehenge of the 21st century is no closer to its prehistoric state than it was in 1901. Restoring the Stones, 1958 to 1964. The story of the Atkinson, Piggott, and Stone years is probably better known than earlier episodes. There is much concerning the aims, objectives, and the undertakings of their work that remains relatively unexposed and unexplored. Reasons for the various resetting and re-erections have been many and varied, and although throughout there has been an expressed belief that each episode had made the monument more secure, less susceptible to falling further into ruin, motivation has usually extended beyond this. Certainly, archaeology benefited from the episode via the results of Gowland's excavations, but should the stone have been left alone or secured in its leaning position rather than being hauled upright? Blow and Garland, and later Piers and Hawley and others, felt that the stones, if the short and long-term danger of collapse was accepted, would be more secure, concreted in an upright position, something that was fitted with the idea that all the stones were originally perpendicular. In other words, as well as being established, it was assumed that Stonehenge was being returned to something more like its original Neolithic state. Of course, as Piers was to realize, this was not the case. By the late 1930s, the feeling within the Office of Works was that this kind of work was not restoration at all, but something that left them open to the charges of faking, i.e. creating an entirely new monument out of what remained of a prehistoric one. Sir Edmund Antrobus III had insisted that archaeologists were the most responsible for mischief at archaeological sites, and if the ancient monuments were placed in their hands, they would still do more. In his terms, then, the amount of mischief occurring at Stonehenge since it entered his guardianship in 1918 has been considerable, and although no more stones have been moved since 1964, and excavation within the area of the monument during the same period has been minimal, the appearance of Stonehenge has continued to change. Think of the issues they had with the changing and alterations to Stonehenge in just the past 100 years. Now think about the people you trust and who not to trust, and do you trust the men, knowing that the men that have been in and out of the area for the last 100 years have done as much as they've done, and it's been there for 4,900 years before that. Clearly, we are looking at Stonehenge and just another fraud. Let's end it on a good note. How about some proof of the flat Earth? I'd love to see the NASA Globe Boys and their little boy band refute this one. It's called radio waves. And let's look at the first radio transmissions that went from the continental United States across the Atlantic Ocean and across the Pacific Ocean to Hawaii with no satellites in space. Magic.
Flat Earth winning.
Became a reality. This same year, 1915, at Arlington, Virginia, telephone engineers hooked together 500 vacuum tubes to generate enough radio power to send the human voice across the Atlantic for the first time in history. Words spoken into a radio telephone transmitter at Arlington were heard by engineers listening at the Eiffel Tower in Paris and also at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. 1920 brought the beginning of radio broadcasting, but a vacuum tube radio receiver was a real luxury. Then, the next 10 years gave us talking motion pictures, transoceanic radio telephone service.
So, 2,500 miles over to Hawaii, and that's a 789-mile curvature. Certainly didn't seem like the radio waves had any trouble, or were they just going across a flat plane? Use your mind, not NASA's. You're not going to get the secrets out of a book. But I do want to remind you guys, first and foremost, that these points, this entire video, every video I've ever done, are my opinions. I give you an update of where I am in my research and things that I've found. And that's it. But if you take one thing away from this video or any of my videos, it is simply this: to open your mind and find your own truth, and to only trust those who have absolutely earned it. So don't trust me. I could be wrong. The Earth might not be flat. I mean, it could be really flat. Could even be really, really flat. So open that mind. So guys, that's it for today. Remember, the time to launch will be out probably Friday. Stay tuned, check your email as well, so you can be ready for that. And remember to be kind to your neighbor. Maybe bring them an apple pie. Don't lie to each other. Do your own research. And always remember to open up your mind, because there's truth inside. This is Scientism. Till next time. Peace.
Astronauts to the moon.
That's what science is.
What's going on, everyone? It's Scientism, back with another video for you today. We're going to actually touch on a few topics, so I wanted to cover those real quick just so you know. We're going to be talking about the great religion of the 21st century, otherwise known as Scientism. We're going to be talking a little bit of math, some NASA fraud, some Roscosmos fraud,
some JAXA fraud. We also have a little bit more information on the stone hoax or the phony henge, whichever way you prefer to refer to it. And we also have some launches and some ISS stuff. Also going to touch on radio waves proving the flat Earth, as well as Lake Okeechobee in Florida, also proving a flat Earth. So lots to talk about. So let's get started. So first, a quick reminder for those of you that will be doing the launch with us. Time to launch. Be on the lookout for my next video, which should be out in the next 2 days, and it will include all the launch details. And I'm also going to be emailing everyone who had sent me an email confirming their interest. So look for that in the coming days. Second thing about that, please check the date. I've been announcing 9/28 as the date, but found out that our eclipse is on the evening of the 27th here on the west coast of the United States. So make sure you check the date so you know when it will be in your area. The other thing I wanted to mention was a reminder that we've been doing the Monday night show, which we call Globebusters. Bob, TJ, myself, and Missa all get together and talk the flatlands, and it's been a pretty good show. We've had 5 already, so make sure you tune in Monday nights at 6 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time to enjoy the hilarity that is the Globebuster show. And due to the overwhelming success of last night's fantastic show, where we went and watched ISS live for about an hour or an hour and a half and saw some peculiar space activity, we've decided to add a second show. So based on that video, I want to know if you feel that the sun is 93 million miles away. Simple answers, no or yes. And so, if you said no, you do not think that the sun is 93 million miles away, you pass. You're using your head, you're understanding science is not the end-all be-all, and that you actually have brains, so congratulations. And I'm sure no one said yes, right? What? No. Someone thinks the sun is 93 million miles away.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
So now let's talk about the great religion of the 21st century, the end-all be-all, and that is scientism. What people need to realize is not only is science an institution, it's also an extremely dogmatic one, as it assumes very controversial statements as being true, when in fact those statements are either demonstrably false or they're questionable, to say the very least. And these dogmas influence the interpretations of the scientific data. And this impacts the studies that are done and for what reason they're done, and also determines what is ultimately taught in the education system. So science is just as much of a religion as religion is. In order to be taken seriously in science, well, you need to be published in a peer-reviewed paper. In order to be published in a peer-reviewed paper, you would have to do quite a few tests and studies and experiments, and of course these things take money. So in order to get the backing to do the tests and experiments that you would need to get into a quality peer-reviewed journal, well, those studies would need to be work that would be valuable to the current models that science gives us. I mean, if you think about it, why would the government or a large company or institution, why would they fund a study that has a potential to throw a wrench in the current accepted dogmas or the current accepted system? It just wouldn't happen. If your study would hurt science, then it will be suppressed, and you'll probably lose your job and the funding that you had, and basically be blackballed from science. Science is still a very strongly career-driven discipline. It is a career-driven profession, and they, just like everyone else, are trying to make money. And scientists depend heavily on a good reputation in order to receive funding, and a good reputation. So now you may join us at the same flat time on the same flat channel, but instead on Tuesdays. So at 6 o'clock on Tuesdays, we will be watching the ISS live. Hope that you'll join us. And now to more serious issues. But first, before we get started on all that, we're going to have to go back to school just a quick second, because it's time for a pop quiz. Sorry, guys. Relax, relax. Come on, it's just one little question with two little multiple choice answers. It'll be simple, I promise you. We'll just watch a 20-second video, answer the question, and boom, you're done. And I can get a good assessment of where we all are. Alright, so now that you've watched that,